We're here with journalist Roxana Saberi, who was imprisoned for 100 days in Iran. You went on a hunger strike while you were in prison. Why did you do that?
Because, well, in the beginning, they were pressuring me to make this false confession that I was a spy, and I told them I wasn't. But under their many threats and pressures, and when they said, we'll free you if you say you're a spy, because this is not only what I was forced to do, but many people before me, political prisoners, had been pressured to do in Iran. I made a false confession saying, okay, my book is a cover for espionage. And then I decided to recant it while I was still in prison instead of when I would be freed. When I recanted it, it seemed my captors were infuriated. And I much later learned that they were planning to free me at about that time. And in fact, when I recanted, they also said, we knew from the very beginning that the confession was false. And it really shocked me that why did they make me say it? Why did they arrest me? And how often do they falsely accuse other innocent people of crimes they didn't commit?
Now, did you ever have any classified documents in your possession? Your lawyer later said that you did have something that was considered classified.
I never had any classified documents, but my captors lied and said that I did, and they tried to make me think that I did. And I think my lawyers were under some pressure by the Iranian authorities to make those false statements.
Were they Iranian lawyers?
Yes, they were Iranian lawyers, but I wasn't allowed to have those lawyers that I really wanted. I was barred from having them and actually threatened. The attorneys, or the prosecutor said, if you take these attorneys, the ones that I wanted, he said, they will be to your detriment. And with one of them, he said, if you have him as your lawyer and the appellate court decides to rule in your favor, I will object. In other words, he was saying, I'm going to keep you in prison if you take this lawyer. So I wasn't allowed to have those lawyers that I knew would be courageous and stand up for me and not say false statements about me.
Sure, and they too, the lawyers you had, obviously under pressure from the government.
Yes, I believe they were under great, well, they told me, at least the first one told me he was under a lot of pressure.
Now, how were you treated in prison?
I was first in solitary confinement for 2 weeks and cut off from the world, without access to an attorney, without access to my family. And later on I heard that there's a phrase for the kind of treatment I endured, which is called white torture, which doesn't leave a mark on the body but can devastate one's mind and conscience. And it's a combination of manipulation and threats and intimidation and cutting you off from the outside world and making you do and say things that rob you of your self-dignity.
Did you ever feel as if you were about to lose your mind?
Yes, several times. Solitary confinement is very difficult because as human beings we need contact with others, and I knew the history of Evin prison, that so many people, political prisoners had been held there and that there have been hangings there.
And the point of that prison is to break people. That's why they put you there.
And they're very good at it. They're very good at it. They know how to put pressure on people to do what they say, and even to make false statements about themselves or about others.
Now, you met a lot of interesting people while you're there, and you talk about them in your book. Tell us about one or two of the people that you met there.
I met so many interesting political prisoners. One was a humanitarian worker who was working for an American NGO, and she was helping administer a health program between American and Iranian health professionals. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison because she was accused of trying to incite a soft revolution against the government through her work, which she was doing no such thing. Fortunately, she was freed. But there were two other cellmates that I can tell you about now, too, who are still in prison today. They were members of the Baha'i faith in Iran, which is considered the largest non-Muslim religious minority in Iran. They were being persecuted for their religious beliefs, and they faced very serious charges that could lead to the death penalty.
That's just amazing. I want to go back a little bit and ask you again a question about the effort to have you released. There was an Iranian film director named Bahman Gobadi.
Yes.
He published an open letter asking for your release and described you as both a friend and fiance.
Yes.
And you were telling me before we started the program that he wasn't actually your fiance.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, in the Islamic Republic, you can't be boyfriend and girlfriend, and, well, the regime doesn't consider that legitimate. You either have to be husband and wife or you have to be engaged. And so in order to speak out on my behalf, he believed that he should say that he's my fiance. He couldn't just say he was my boyfriend, which in reality he was my boyfriend.
Are you still dating?
Yes, we are.
Still friends? Very good. Where is he today?
He is right now in Iraq, not Iran, but Iraq, and he's doing some cultural activities there.
All right. Now, what advice would you have for journalists who are covering stories in Iran, living in Iran?
Well, especially in the past year, there have been increasing restrictions on the press in Iran. And we've seen many Iranian journalists have been jailed and are in jail today. But foreign journalists as well face many increasing restrictions, and it's difficult to work there. But those who are able to report, they're doing a great service, even though they can't report on all the realities there. I think being there and having to face restrictions is better than not being able to report from there at all.
Even though this was a difficult period for you, on some level, do you think that you were placed there so that you could come out and tell this story?
That's a very good question. And in the beginning, I thought, why am I here? And I was very angry at God. I thought, why don't you save me from this place? But one of my cellmates said, perhaps this is part of our destiny. And many of my cellmates were simply just standing up peacefully for basic human rights. And I think many of them tried to rationalize their imprisonment, that why are we being punished for doing what is right? And for me, I think perhaps I went through this experience so that I could feel and experience injustice, really for the first time in my life. Not only through my own experiences, but also through meeting other women who are facing injustices. And right now I'm so lucky to be free and to be joining others in using our freedoms to help speak out for those who can't make their own voices heard. And there are so many of them. And I think it's very important for the media to keep covering these violations of human rights, and for ordinary people to sign petitions, take part in demonstrations, write to lawmakers. It all makes a difference when there are enough people doing it over a continuous period of time.
All right, Roxana Saberi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to all of you for watching today. Roxana's book is called Between Two Worlds. It's out in bookstores now. We'll see you again next week.